All right. Hello, React Alicante. It's a pleasure to be here for the fourth time. Just out of curiosity, who here is their first time at React Alicante? Wow. Welcome, everyone. I hope you'll get to experience like this amazing environment that is this conference. For those of you who is not the first time, welcome back. I did this in the last 3 years, so I think it's fair that I do it again. This conference is one of my favorites of the whole world. And this is not possible without the work that Vittoria and Nacho are doing. So everyone, just give it up for Vittoria and Nacho. So let's start this thing, shall we? What's the state of testing in React? Well, I was just having a chat with someone before this talk, and they said, yeah, just move everything to AI, I don't care about testing, that's the talk, goodbye. No, that's not what we're going to be talking. I would invite you to have a reflection. Reflect on why do you test. Think about that. You don't need to answer me, you can answer me afterwards, but think about why are you testing. Are you testing because you like the resilience? Are you testing because you like to sleep better at night? Are you testing because your boss told you that you have to test? Or you're not even testing? There might be a percentage that are not testing. So I want you to raise your hands, and this part I'm going to try to speak fast because it's going to be a couple of bullet points, but I would like you to raise your hand if any of the following situations have ever happened to you. And keep your hands up while we're going. I'm going to say this very fast, so let's go. Raise your hand if you ever had flaky tests, if you ever had complex tests, if you ever had slow tests, issues with lack of ESM support, issues with lack of TypeScript support, too much boilerplate, mocking being painful, testing tools are hard, and test tools are hard to maintain. Okay, thank you. So I saw like 60% of the room with their arms raised, which tells me that 40% of you either have the most amazing testing solutions ever, or are lying. Either way, I will find you, and I'll talk with you after this talk, because I want to know what's happened. So when I decided to start doing this talk, I looked at where are the pain points. And the best way to get data in the JavaScript ecosystem, it's the State of the JS survey. By the way, the new one for this year has just opened, so please go fill it. It's great for maintainers, for everyone that's wanting to be educated of what's happening around our land of JavaScript, React, whatever. So just make sure that if you have some time, maybe on the flights back, on the train, go and fill this State of JS. It's also pretty great because it allowed me to have the data to do this talk today. So when I started wondering about the pain, I looked at the State of JS survey, and to the surprise, not my surprise, I would say that the biggest pain is mocking. That makes sense. Then followed by configuration, performance, jest, ESM and CJS, excessive complexity, flakiness. The number 8 that's empty is browser support. I don't know why it didn't fit there, but it's whatever. End-to-end testing, lack of documentation, TypeScript, unit testing, and debugging. And this pain led us to the next point, which is how happy are we with what we have? It's a 2.5 out of 4, which is yes. It's like, I'm happy, but it's not like, woo, I'm happy, I love testing, I will do it all day. No, it's like, I like it, I have to do it. That's where we are with testing in React, JavaScript land right now. So I thought, okay, let's look at this date, let's start asking some friends some questions, and do the 2025 state of React testing. So just short self-promotion. My name is Daniel Afonso. I'm a senior developer advocate at PagerDuty. I'm part of the Solid.js DX team. Besides all of these things, I'm an instructor at Get.io. I wrote a book 3 years, I don't remember anymore timing. Time is very relative, about React Query a couple years ago. And I maintain a monthly newsletter called This Month in Solid for everyone who wants to catch up in Solid. That's also a great point for you to check. And this, I think, is the first solid reference in React Alicante for this year. So if you were in previous ones, you know what I'm talking about. If not, you'll learn soon eventually. Okay. So on the state of JS, I was thinking, okay, how are companies testing? How are they writing their code? What are the tools that they're using? Well, first of all, 13% of people are not testing at all. I feel like someone from this 13% is here. Okay, but aside from that, we saw that Jest is in the majority, and I'm not surprised about this. Jest has been a staple for unit integration testing in the last few years, and we'll talk a bit more about unit and integration in a bit. Then we're followed by Storybook, VTest, Playwright, Cypress, etc. But this gave me something. It gave me the tools that people are using for testing, but it didn't teach me how they are actually using it. So at around January, February, whatever, early this year, a couple of friends of mine received a message from me. And I sent a message to 10 friends, 8 of them replied, and I asked them, how are you writing tests in your company? Could you give me some data? What are the tools that you're using? What are the types of tests that you're using? Some of the people that are here might be here in this audience. Some of them, I'm not going to tell you who. And they gave me data. So for the case one, this company is using BDD with Playwright, so behavior-driven development tests. They use Cucumber and Gherkin to write their tests. Everything is end-to-end. Then they're using Jest and the React testing library for unit integration, and Storybook as a component catalog. And I feel like this is interesting, because followed for case 2, Jest and React testing library for unit and integration, and Cypress for end-to-end. So already I have 2 repeated ones with a change for what we're doing to end-to-end. The case 3 is a company that has been using Karma and Jasmine for their integration/component testing, and we'll talk about this in a bit. And they're using Jest and the React testing library for unit testing. They're using Playwright for visual regression, Playwright for end-to-end, and Storybook as the component catalog. Now the case 4, it's the only one that replied that they're using WebDriver IO for end-to-end, and they're using Jest and Enzyme for integration testing. And this is the part that I'm having a ton of fun, because I noticed the people that I mentioned here just walking around and like, that's us. So, whatever. I feel like from case 5 to 8, that's where it became more interesting to me. Because case 5 was the first person that mentioned mock service worker. So for those of you who are not familiar with mock service worker, you were not at React Alicante 2 years ago. But it's a solution for mocking APIs. And that works on the browser by using a service worker, and works in Node by using a Node interceptor. We'll talk a bit more about MSW in a bit. But they are using Playwright and Jest and React testing library for unit integration. Okay, makes sense. Case 6, they have Jest and React testing library for unit integration. It seems like we're going in a pattern. Case 7 was my favorite one. And I think it's probably because this is a more recent company that this stack and this mentality is a bit different than the other ones. First of all, this was the first person that considers static analysis as a part of testing. So if you're familiar with the testing trophy, static analysis sits in the bottom. If you're not familiar, you'll see it in a bit. But we have TypeScript and ESLint for static analysis. This is also the first person that mentioned VTest. So it also is probably attributed to being a more recent company. They had time already, or they started already with Vit and VTest in mind. And React testing library, Playwright for end-to-end. And finally, for case 8, Cypress for end-to-end, Enzyme, and React testing library for unit/integration. Now, I get what some of you might be thinking. Why are you using these tools? This is one of those legacy solutions where the rule is the tests that existed before are Enzyme, the new ones are written in React testing library. The rule is if you had to update an Enzyme test, you migrate it to the React testing library. So it's a good migration plan for some situations. I saw some people laughing in the audience, so they're probably in the same situation. And this also mentioned mock service worker. And I love mock service worker. So I think for getting the state of testing in our lens right now, I think it's important that we go to the testing trophy. So we're going to start with static analysis. Then we'll go from unit and integration, because I think their stories are very together, at least in the last 10 years. And then we'll wrap up with end-to-end. And there might be some time for AI, because it's 2025. We have to talk about AI. So, to the surprise of no one, I think, TypeScript and ESLint are leading in the static analysis field. They are the better solutions at this point. TypeScript is being rewritten in Go, which makes it even more performant and fast. However, I'm recommending people to keep an eye out on things like Biome and or Oxlint, or whatever. I've asked 2 or 3 people from that company much of times, and they say it all different ways. So I think it's important to keep an eye for these 2, because there are some projects using them already. There's some open source projects checking them out. So while TypeScript and ESLint are probably going to be your go-to, if you're starting a pet project or you would like to check them out, I recommend you check those 2. So let's go to an history lesson, I think. And let's start with a timeline. This timeline starts around 10 years ago. And what we were doing 10 years ago was we were using Karma and Jasmine for writing what we call component tests, or tests we're running in a browser. What was the issue? First of all, they were flaky as hell. That was the first thing. Second, the browsers were always crashing. Third, CI/CD, pain in the ass. Really, we were struggling with this thing that we needed a better option. Now, what was the better option then? What if we could do the same thing we're doing in a browser in Node? So that's when Jest and JS DOM showed up. So for those of you who are not familiar, what JS DOM does is it polyfills the browser APIs, so it works in Node. So basically, you're getting all the APIs that you have in the browser, but running in your Node environment. So you're not actually running your components, running your code in the same way as they work in a browser. You just have these tweaks. And I think it's important to keep this in mind, because I'll talk about this in 3 or 4 points. So this was when we were around 2017, 18. Now our tests were faster. We were working in Node. CI/CD was better, more performant. So what was the next transition? Well, does anyone know what happened in 2018? There were 2 things that happened in 2018. First one, React hooks. And the second one, the testing library. Now, I think these React hooks and the testing library popularity are a bit intertwined, because when React hooks came out, everyone that was running tests on Enzyme, their tests crashed. That thing was not working back then. So we had a bit of the pain. But this was also the great time for the testing library to show up, and the React testing library with it. With that mentality, which is the more your tests resemble your way your software is used, the more confidence they can give you. So we changed a bit on, besides changing tools, we changed a bit our mentality on how we were writing tests. Now we were writing tests from the perspective of a user. We were being user-centric. Now this caused a bit of categorization pain, because even though the testing trophy said this, I've worked at enough companies and I've seen every single one have different definitions of what a unit and an integration test are. We started having like this categorization pain. Because to be honest, I don't know about you, but when I learned testing, I learned it from a back-end developer perspective, where I'm testing a unit, so I'm testing that unit implementation details. Now, I'm having a library that tells me that I shouldn't be focusing on implementation details. So now my unit is what? A component, and I'm testing it from a component perspective as a user-centric way. So we all got confused. It was, and it still is, there's different categorizations. Everyone is naming these things different ways. But we were happy, because the testing library and this change made at least our tests readable and made them more fun. I was having a ton of fun, and I still have a ton of fun writing tests. Actually, and this is my free tip for any one of you. If you're onboarding a new company, start by reading the tests. It will teach you a lot about the business logic, and it will also teach you a lot on how their current testing structure is, if there are any. Then we have our next transition, and this happened around 2020, 2021. Because now we started talking about test runners and bundler integration. Because I don't know about you, but configuring Jest to run with Webpack was a huge pain. I spent hours going Webpack files over time. It was a configuration hell. And it was not just that. I invite you to look at Jest, and this is still now. Jest is great, but it's stuck in time. And what do I mean with Jest being stuck in time? Well, TypeScript support, it's experimental. It's still experimental. And it's not just TypeScript. ESM support is experimental. And in the meantime, we're in 2025, and you have products like Storybook on the version 10 that is being shipped with only ESM support. And they're experiencing like a 15% decrease in their bundle size. So that means that it's even faster. And so we're in a point where projects and solutions are thinking about dropping ESM, but Jest is still like, it's experimental. So what we needed was a test runner that was aware of its environment. And it would work together with the bundler. So in a sense, we want to build our tests the same way that we build our application. So this is when Vite and Vitest showed up. We had our testing solution working together with our bundler. Our code, our components were being rendered the same way. Everything worked the same way. We even did small changes in some companies. Instead of using JS DOM, we started using AppyDOM, which is still a JS DOM-based solution, but it cut off on certain APIs for performance sake. So it's not as complete, but it's faster. Now, this leads us to the beginning of this year. Artem, the creator of Mock Service Worker, wrote this amazing blog post in January. And in this blog post, he says, why won't I use JS DOM? And for today's attention span, I know that this might be a big post. So I summarized it for you. The JS DOM issue focuses on JS DOM. It runs in Node and polyfills browser APIs. So what's happening is you're executing browser-like code without an actual browser. And Artem writes it pretty much the best way to describe this. JS DOM runs in Node, pretends to be a browser, but ends up being neither. And there could be examples, and we can talk about stuff like issues, imagine like mocking local storage, having to deal with all the situations, because these are stuff that the JS DOM doesn't support. So I've had issues with that in the past. So what's Artem's suggestion in this blog post? Well, if you're familiar with the testing library foundation, you're going to find this familiar. The closer your test environment resembles the actual environment where your code runs, the more value your tests will bring you. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you maybe it's time we go back to the browser. And it's time we go back to writing what we called component tests again. And Vitest, browser mode, is a great way to do this. If for the people who are using Vite already, this is going to be super fast, and I'll show you in a bit. For the people who are not there yet, you have solutions like Playwright and Cypress that also give you some variation of this, but I like to keep with Vitest. Now, I know it says experimental, but you can take my word for it that for the tests that I've done and the tests that I migrated, I haven't found that much of a difference. And the only issue is like they're like 2 or 3 seconds slower. But to be honest, I can take 2 or 3 seconds slower, given that I have the confidence that those things are running in an actual browser environment. So my tests are actually running on the same place where my users is seeing them. Now, the people that are using Vitest, the people that are using Vite might be thinking, okay, let's start a 2 or 3, 5 sprints migration. Well, it's actually faster than that. Artem did this tweet right the week before I started working on this talk, and it's very interesting because all you have to do is replace the testing library for the Vitest browser React, because basically it gives you the same APIs, gives you the same things, and make sure that your tests start being asynchronous. I did this migration as well, and I found 5 different things that I think it's important for React folks. The first one is, and I think people are going to love that, because you get rid of everything that's query by / find by. Everyone, like, I've seen many discussions. Should I use query by? Should I use get by? Should I use find by? Should I use query by? But now it's all get by. So you're welcome. And thank you for whoever wrote this. Second point, no more wait fors from the React testing library, because the great thing about this is that these tests, thanks to the await, they do automatic retries for you. So until it times out, it will retry until your assertion passes, or until it tries to get the stuff. So you don't have to worry about getting the asynchronous utils for waiting for stuff. The third point, mock service worker. Now, instead of running Node, it's going to run in browser. So let's swap out from server to worker mode. 4, all tests are asynchronous, for obvious reasons of what we'll be talking about. And the fifth one was my favorite, because I got to delete so many mocks. Got to delete local storage mocks, got to delete session storage mocks, because now I'm using the actual ones. Now we get to actually use the browser in our tests. And that made me very happy. Now, I get some people might be skeptical about that, and when I was preparing that talk, I was like, how do I convince people to try this out? And the exact same day, before the first time I delivered the version of this talk, Kent wrote this tweet. And I was like, thank you. I appreciate you. Because now you have the author of the testing library telling you, I've never been so happy to see people uninstalling the testing library. Honestly, it's incredible that testing library has been so successful and has been adopted, but now, thanks to Playwright and vtest, his work is done. And then he proceeded to start doing AI courses, which I'm very excited to start checking. So if the person that wrote this thing is telling you that maybe you should give this a check, well, we trusted him in 2018. Let's trust him again. So this is where I see the next migration. This is where hopefully we'll be in a couple of years when our migrations are over. We just need Vite and vtest. And the React testing library, even though it's not fully there, it's still there because you deleted it, but the vtest browser React still uses the same APIs. So the fundamentals are still the same and the migration path is easier. So that wraps up my history lesson. And I think the future is indeed in component testing. Now, let's talk about end-to-end. To the surprise of no one, I think, Playwright is winning this. And the reason why I say this is, well, Microsoft has been investing a lot of time and money in this community, and you can see it. You can see that Playwright, the community, like there's always a video from Debbie O'Brien explaining certain things. She was actually here with what, 3 years ago? 2 years ago doing a talk about Playwright. The community has been growing and growing and being better, and thanks Eric for that. The community has been better and better, and when they came out, they gave you things out of the box that you had to pay in Cyprus, like parallelism. And these were some examples of things that it made better. I could spend a lot of time thinking and talking about this part, but I just think it's important that all of these are still good solutions. But from my perspective and my opinion, Playwright community has been pushing it further and faster. However, Cyprus gets some points because they were the first one to bring back component testing. Like in 2022, Jessica Sachs, when she was working at Cyprus, was the first person to say, let's implement this in Cyprus. Now, she actually said, now we have this in vtest browser mode, so we don't even need to use Cyprus anymore for that. But we'll talk about that. When I was doing this research, I found something. End-to-end solutions are becoming more than just end-to-end. And what do I mean by this? Well, if you look at all of these end-to-end solutions, you're going to find a variation of visual testing. You're going to find a variation of component testing. And Playwright is currently experimental as well, but it's working pretty well too. You're going to find a variation of API testing. And you're going to find a variation of accessibility testing. So I was thinking, it seems like these solutions are fighting for a space and are fighting for a way of becoming our single testing suite. Maybe we won't need vtest or jest or whatever we're using. Maybe these solutions are trying to push into the direction where we are only using them. Heck, I've seen some companies already only using Playwright for everything because when things like server components came out, nobody knew how to test server components, so what did everyone do? Let's just write end-to-end, because that's the closest way that we can run this thing in a browser. Well, now you have component testing, so that makes it better. And one thing that's important, and a lot of people might not be familiar with, but the thing that many people just consider to be their component catalog, storybook, also allows you to write all of these tests. You can write all of these same things. So it's not just the things that we typically consider testing solutions. It's even things that a couple of years ago, a couple of months ago, were just for us to see our design systems. Now we can test with it. So I think last year, Storybook wrote this post about component testing React server components, and I think this visual is the best description of how we should move forward, how the new testing trophy should look like. We keep the static analysis there, we keep the unit testing there, and now we start shifting into the browser with component testing and end-to-end up there, but we don't forget about visual and accessibility, because we're always forgetting about these things, but this is how I think we're going to be, or how we should be in 4, 3 years, whatever. Now, I have 9 minutes, so I'm going to speed up. Mocking. Well, I think if you've been using Mock Service Worker, to the surprise of no one, you're going to think and understand why it is the industry standard for API mocking for JavaScript. Works with REST, GraphQL, WebSockets, works in browser, works in Node, and they're working on something right now called cross-process interception. Yes, that's the right name, which is going to allow you to mock your data on the server and on the client. And this works pretty well when you're using server components or when you're using server tags, like things like use server as well, or server functions. And, well, if you were here 2 years ago, I can say, I told you so. Because I did a 30-minute talk all on Mock Service Worker and how I love it so much. So if you want to learn more about that, go check all the React Alicante talks. I'm very happy to have done this talk and to have invested in MSW as early as I did. Now, I have 8 minutes, so let's talk about AI. And this is the part where everyone's like, oh, just rewrite all my tests, please. It's my best buddy. Yes, it is. Just make sure you check its sources. I think a point that is important to make here is AI shouldn't be a replacement for you getting educated. You shouldn't use AI as a way of you outsourcing your knowledge. Make sure that it works with you instead of replacing you. And I'm going to pause here because I want that to sink in for a bit. Next, MCP. MCP has been growing and growing with testing solution. This is also one of the reasons why Playwright has been leading as well. I think they were probably one of the first in the testing world to do their Model Context Protocol server. So for those of you who are not familiar with MCP, it's basically USB-C for AI. It allows you to connect your APIs, your functions, wherever with your LLM. And what this means is basically you can have Playwright functions and things that you would use being exposed to your LLM, and you can tell your LLM, like, open this website, go to this page, do that, and then use all the commands, all the tools that you called to do that, and spit out a test. And it's as fast as that, and it's super exciting. And it's not just Playwright that's investing in MCP. Meetscene is investing in MCP. ESLint is investing in MCP. Everyone is investing in MCP. There's a conference about MCP happening right now in London as we speak. So it seems like everyone's bullish on it. I won't take more time on talking about that. I think it's just important for you to know that these things are there. Now, self-healing. It's a topic that's on everyone's mind. We want tests that heal themselves, tests that when they break, they find a way of automatically fixing themselves without any human intervention of sources. Well, last year, there was this post on the Ministry of Testing that had this company do all this flow for whenever one of their tests failed, for them to be automatically regenerated. And this worked pretty well for that company. They might have taken a bit of extra time building this than they would like, but this is a great post that I recommend you checking. However, the feeling is that nowadays we don't need to have something as complex as this, because now we have things like Auto Playwright, we have things like SciPrompt, we have things like Meetscene, that you just give it natural language and it will basically use it to write your test. And the good thing about having these types of solutions is if for some reason the definition of where the login button is or the place where it is, well, it will find a way of tracking that login button there in the UI. One thing that I think it's important to mention is this comes at a cost of speed. You're taking your tests, you're taking everything through an LLM or a VLM, you're taking everything to AI, so there's the speed of traveling there, figuring out what it has to do, reasoning, coming back. However, it's exciting. And Meetscene was built by ByteDance, which is the company behind TikTok. And they also built this thing called UiTars, which is a VLM, a visual language model. Basically, what the VLM does is it takes screenshots, evaluates them, reasons around it, and based on your prompt, does certain things. Heck, UiTars can play Doom better than I can. It's really, really good. And things like Meetscene, things like SciProm, things like Autoplaywright can hook in into LLMs, can hook in into VLMs, and allow you to basically get as close as possible to what would be the world of self-healing. Are we there already? We're not. Are we going to be there soon? I have no idea. I'm just here to give you data, and then you'll take your decisions from here from this point on. So I think it's time we start wrapping up, because I know Mateusz is very excited to come on stage already. He's already looking at me. We started here. We started with these points. And then this started this madness and this journey of me bothering 10 of my friends, being ignored by 2 of them, getting some data, and writing this talk. So let's recap what we just saw in the last few minutes, shall we? Everyone will keep doing their own things and having different ways of testing. There's testing for the purpose of people that not like them or for the purpose of whatever it is. It's highly opinionated. I've had discussions that could take entire days with people in the past. What works for me might not work for you, might not work for you. So I think that this is important to keep in mind when we're discussing testing. Every company, every person is going to have a preference. Second point, TypeScript and ESLint are the best way to do static analysis. And they'll keep being. However, keep check for Biome and OXLint. VTest brought the shift into test runners that we were long expecting. No more hours dealing with Webpack, no more hours making sure that the jest config was working. Like the kids say today, component testing is so back, and it's shifting us back to the browser. We are going back into time, basically. And I don't know if he has this on these slides, but 2 weeks ago I was watching this talk from Mateusz, which is our next speaker, and he was telling us a bit on how we are in a position of, we seem to keep getting the stuff from the past and bringing them to today. Because now we have better tech, we have better standards, we have better solutions. We can find a way of using our history, learn from it, and just bring it back. I have examples of things like this, like Signals was an example. Server-side rendering. Everyone forgot about server-side rendering for like 5 years, and then like in 2020, everyone's like, our clients are a bit heavy, maybe we should go back to the server. So it's about how the technology and all the things that we had in the past, how we can make them work back again and for us. So maybe I invite you. What are things that you were doing 10, 15, 20 years ago that could be helpful for you? I don't know, maybe someone could be inventing a new library or a new standard or things in the future. And if you do, please tell me. I would like to feel like that I contributed somehow for that and feel proud of myself. Mock Service Worker is the de facto solution for network mocking, and it will keep being, and I'm very happy to see the work that Artem has been doing. End-to-end solutions seem to be pushing into a testing tool suite. It's exciting, interesting to see how this is going to progress, because, like I said, some companies were already only doing end-to-ends a couple years ago. Now, how is this going to develop? So I'm excited to see that part. AI won't fix your knowledge gap, but will make you more productive if you know how to leverage it. And it might lead to self-healing, but at the cost of some speed and time. And finally, we should stop considering tests second-class citizens. I've had this discussion many times. People don't like testing. Some love it, some hate it. Testing should be as important as the code that you write, or even more. The reason why you do this is that you have the reliabilities, that we sleep better at night. So let's make sure that we find time to actually do these things together instead of saying, oh, I'll write the tests in the future. They need to be there as you ship, because they are the ones that will make sure that you're not waking up at night with an incident or something like that. So with that, my time is out. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll be around after.